Hey, church family, thanks so much for joining us for today's Daily Connection video. We're continuing to talk about the death of Christ and how his death on the cross paid the price for our sin and has freed us from sin and death. And that's literally what we are looking at today in Romans chapter 6, verses 8 and 9. I want to go ahead and read those and then let's jump right in. So, verse 8 of Romans chapter 6, it says, "Now if we died with Christ, we believe that we will also live with him. Because we know that Christ, having been raised from the dead, will not die again. Death no longer rules over him." And that word, if, now if we die with Christ, right? We see that over and over and over again throughout this passage in Romans 6 is something that Paul brings up over and over again. If we die, kind of saying, man, this has got to happen. But if it happens, there's some results. And so those results of us dying with Christ are, one, we no longer depend on the old self. The old is gone, the new has come, right? We no longer have to depend on our old self, who is completely and totally powerless to fight against sin and to fight against the consequences of sin. There's nothing our old self could do about our sin problem. Only God can fix that problem through the death of his son on the cross. And so whenever we die with Christ, we are saying, hey, we aren't dealing with the old self because the old self couldn't solve the problem. And then second of all, if we are dying to self, we are also dying to our selfish desires, our selfish ways. We're dying to the flesh. We're saying, hey, no longer am I going to do what I want to do, right? Because we know what I want to do, it wasn't working, right? That plan wasn't working. If you have a plan that doesn't work, then you reach out to someone who has one that does work. And so obviously our plan wasn't working. Our selfish desires are not getting it done. So when we die to self, when we die with Christ, we give up those selfish desires. So again, I think I mentioned Monday that there are tons of places where we see people who died in the Bible and were resurrected much like Christ. But one thing that's important for us to realize as we look at that is not only did Christ die and was resurrected, but he never died again. Every other person in Scripture who was resurrected, they died again later on. But Christ did something that no one had ever done before. And that is he died, was resurrected, and never died again. To this day has never tasted death because he defeated death. And so when we die with Christ, we give up our old self. We give up our selfish ways. We surrender to his will, surrender to his way. We are also we will not taste death in the same way. Are we going to die eventually? Yes. So far in history, almost every single person has died. In fact, we only have two people in Scripture that we see who never tasted death, but that is literally only to Elijah and Enoch. Every other person on the face, you take those two out, currently the ratio is 1-to-1. Every person that has lived has also died up to this point. And so we are going to face a physical death, yes, but we are being raised with Christ, right? Resurrected. We're going to be resurrected after death, and we will never taste death again because Christ did the miracle that we could not do. Christ defeated death. And so we are called to surrender to him in every way that we can. So a couple of questions that our author asked us to look at. The first one says, how can we know that we've died with Christ? What fruits exist in your life? That would be the question I would ask. How can you know we've died with Christ? Well, what fruit exists in your life? And then second of all, how is our being raised with Jesus evident in our lives? Maybe another way to look at that question is, how can other people see that we have been raised with Christ, right? So take a moment, look at those two questions, really begin to pore over them, see how you can come up with some practical steps in your own life to be sure others can see how you've been raised with Christ. Determine, have you been raised with Christ? And as you do that, church family, we want you to know that we love you and we're praying for you.